You've seen this kind of empath before. Everyone around them is following something, a trend, a mindset, a way of behaving. And this empath isn't. They're not trying to stand out. They're not trying to prove anything. They're just not interested. They observe. They understand, but they don't follow. And if you're that empath, you've probably been told, why are you so different? Why don't you just go with it? Why do you overthink everything? But here's what most people don't realize. This isn't disconnection. This is how empaths operate when they become aware. Today, we're diving into the psychology of mature empaths who don't follow trends and why what looks like distance is actually deep emotional intelligence. Let's start with what people often get completely wrong about empaths. When empaths don't follow trends, people quickly jump to conclusions like they think they're better than everyone else. They're trying so hard to be different. They just want attention, just in a quieter way. But none of that reflects how empaths actually function. Empaths are not avoiding trends to stand out or to build some kind of identity around being different. In fact, most of the time they are not trying to be seen at all. Their behavior is driven by something much deeper than social image. They avoid trends because they don't feel aligned with them. See, most people engage with trends for one primary reason, belonging. It creates a sense of connection, inclusion, and being part of something larger. There is comfort in doing what everyone else is doing, even if it's temporary or surface level. But empaths don't just observe trends at face value. They feel what's underneath them. They sense the intention behind them, the emotional pressure that pushes people to participate, the subtle anxiety of I need to keep up, the unspoken fear of being left out if they don't join in. While others see a trend as fun, social, or entertaining, empaths often perceive the emotional current running through it. And once they feel that pressure, it becomes difficult for them to participate authentically. Because if something doesn't feel real to them internally, they can't force themselves into it externally. It creates a kind of internal resistance that they can't ignore or override just for the sake of fitting in. This is where the misunderstanding happens. People assume silence or non-participation. Participation means superiority, arrogance, or detachment. But for empaths, it's not about elevation. It's about sensitivity to emotional authenticity. They are not rejecting people. They are rejecting inauthentic alignment. Because for empaths, there's a simple internal rule that governs their behavior. Pretending feels heavier than being alone. So instead of forcing connection through trends, they choose consistency with what feels real, even if that means standing slightly outside the crowd. Here's what truly separates mature empaths from everyone else. It's not just sensitivity, and it's definitely not emotional weakness. It's something far more subtle, awareness. Empaths don't just experience life on the surface level like most people do. They don't only feel emotions as they come. They go deeper than that. They observe what they are feeling, why they are feeling it, and where that feeling is coming from. In other words, they don't just live experiences. They analyze them while they are happening. Before an empath adopts an idea, follows a trend, or emotionally invests in something, there is always a quiet internal process taking place. It's not loud, it's not rushed, but it is consistent. They start asking themselves questions like, does this actually align with who I am? Do I genuinely believe in this, or am I just absorbing it from my environment? Is this something I chose or something I'm being emotionally pulled into? These questions might not always be verbal, but they are always present in the background of their mind. And because of this internal filtering system, empaths don't move quickly when it comes to emotional or social decisions. While other people might instantly react, agree, or adapt, empaths tend to pause. Not because they are confused, but because they are processing at a deeper level. That pause is extremely important. It's the space where clarity forms. Empaths often sit with things longer than most people. They don't rush to conclusions just to feel included or validated. They allow thoughts, emotions, and situations to fully unfold in their mind before deciding how they truly feel about them. And that simple difference creates something powerful: independence. Because while most people are reacting to what is happening around them in real time, empaths are stepping back and observing it from a slightly higher perspective. They are catching patterns, energy shifts, intentions, and emotional undercurrents that others might completely miss. So while others react quickly, empaths observe quietly. While others follow the crowd, empaths question the direction. And over time, this habit shapes the way they think, the way they choose, and ultimately the way they exist in the world. Most people engage with trends, opinions, and social behaviors for one main reason: acceptance. There is a natural human desire to be liked, to be included, and to feel like they belong. So, they follow what is popular, what is approved, and what is currently being praised because it gives them a sense of validation. But mature empaths slowly grow out of this pattern, not because they stop caring about people or connection, and not because they reject social interaction. The shift happens for a much deeper reason. They begin to understand the instability of external validation. Empaths realize that approval from the outside world is constantly changing. What is accepted today might be criticized tomorrow. What is praised in one environment might be rejected in another. Even the same behavior can receive completely opposite reactions depending on people, context, and timing. This inconsistency makes external validation unreliable as a foundation for identity. So instead of chasing approval, empaths start building something more stable within themselves: self-trust. This is where their internal questioning becomes stronger and more consistent. Before participating in anything, they begin to check in with themselves on a deeper level. Do I genuinely like this, or am I just reacting to pressure? Does this represent who I actually am or who I think I should be? Am I choosing this freely, or am I trying to be accepted by others? These questions gradually reshape their decision-making process. At first, the awareness feels subtle, almost like a hesitation. But over time, it becomes a natural filter that runs automatically in the background of their mind. And once this level of awareness builds up, something important happens. The need to constantly follow disappears because the empath is no longer relying on external reactions to define their worth or identity. They are no longer adjusting themselves based on shifting opinions or temporary approval. Instead, they begin to anchor their sense of self internally. At that point, identity is no longer something borrowed from trends, groups, or social expectations. It becomes something self-defined. Empaths stop looking outward for confirmation of who they are and start building it from within. Here's something most people don't fully understand about empaths. Following trends, opinions, and collective behaviors is usually fast. It happens in real time, almost instantly. People see something, feel a reaction, and then move with it. There is very little pause between exposure and response. But processing is completely different. It is slow by design. Empaths don't just register what is popular or what is being widely accepted. They go one level deeper almost immediately. Instead of simply noticing the trend itself, they begin to question the structure behind it. Why is this becoming popular right now? What emotional need is this trend fulfilling? What kind of behavior is this encouraging in people? They start observing patterns instead of moments. They notice shifts in behavior. They pick up on subtle changes in how people react, how they express themselves, and even how quickly those reactions spread. What others see as entertainment or normal social movement, empaths often see as layers of psychological and emotional influence. And once an empath starts seeing things at that level of depth, something naturally changes in their behavior. Blindly following anything becomes difficult because awareness changes perception permanently. You cannot unsee what you have already understood. What looks exciting, new, or entertaining to most people often starts to look repetitive to an empath. They begin to recognize the cycle behind it. The same emotional triggers, the same patterns of attention, the same need for validation or belonging repeating in different forms. And what feels normal or socially expected to others can start to feel slightly forced or artificial to them, not because they are judging it, but because they can sense the underlying structure behind it. This is where the shift happens. Empaths slowly begin to step back, not because they are disconnected from society and not because they lack interest in people or culture. In fact, they are often observing more than anyone else. They step back because they see more clearly. While others are inside the experience, reacting to it as it unfolds, empaths are watching the experience from the outside. A slightly removed perspective, analyzing it, processing it, and understanding it in real time. And that clarity changes everything about how they choose to participate in the world. Mature empaths eventually develop something very rare and often misunderstood: emotional independence. This is not about becoming detached or emotionless. It's not about shutting people out or avoiding connection. It is something much deeper and far more stable than that. Emotional independence means that empaths stop relying on their environment to dictate how they should feel. Instead, they begin to trust their internal response system. So even when they are surrounded by strong opinions, emotional pressure, or social influence, they don't automatically absorb it. They pause internally and check what they actually feel, not what they are expected to feel. This creates a very unique form of stability. It means empaths can be in highly emotional, opinionated, or socially charged environments and still remain grounded within themselves. They can understand people deeply without losing their own emotional center. They can observe emotions, behaviors, and intentions without unconsciously absorbing them as their own. They are able to feel with others but not become others. This ability doesn't appear overnight. It is not something empaths are born with in its mature form. It develops slowly through lived experience, through moments of misunderstanding where their emotional depth was not recognized, through situations where they felt out of place, even in familiar environments, through repeated choices where they had to decide between fitting in and staying true to themselves. Each experience builds a layer of internal awareness, and each choice strengthens self-trust. Over time, this repetition creates a shift in identity. Empaths begin to rely less on external feedback and more on internal clarity. They stop asking, "What do others think I should feel?" and start focusing on, "What do I actually feel in this moment?" This is where real emotional independence forms. Because when self-trust becomes stronger than external influence, the need to constantly adjust yourself to fit environments begins to fade, and eventually something subtle but powerful happens. Following the crowd starts to feel unnatural, not because the crowd is wrong, but because it no longer feels aligned with their interest. Renal state. At the same time, being fully themselves stops feeling like a choice they have to make. It starts feeling normal, natural, stable. And that is the point where emotional independence is fully developed, not as a concept, but as a lived internal reality. Here's the core problem. When empaths don't follow trends, don't react instantly, and don't move with the crowd, they naturally stand out. Not because they are trying to be different, but because their behavior doesn't match the usual pattern most people are used to seeing. And that's where misunderstanding begins. People often don't know how to interpret this kind of behavior. So instead of trying to understand it, they label it. They simplify something complex into something easy to categorize. They say things like, "They're too quiet, they're too different, they're hard to read." But what they are actually witnessing is not confusion or disconnection. They are witnessing control. Empaths don't operate on impulse the way many people do in social environments. They don't instantly react to trends, emotions, or group behavior just because it is happening around them. There is always a pause before their response, a moment of internal evaluation that others may not notice. They don't follow blindly. They don't copy behavior just to fit in. Instead, they observe, process, and then choose. Their actions are filtered through awareness rather than reaction. This creates a very different rhythm compared to most people, where others might move automatically, reacting to what they see, hear, or feel in the moment. Empaths slow things down internally. They don't immediately adopt the energy of a room or the direction of a trend. They step back mentally, even if they are physically present. And that level of awareness can feel unfamiliar to people who are used to automatic responses. Because when someone is used to fast emotional reactions, immediate agreement, or group-driven behavior, calm observation can look unusual. Silence can be misread as distance. Thoughtfulness can be mistaken for detachment. And careful decision-making can be seen as overthinking or hesitation. But in reality, it is none of those things. It is intentional control. Empaths are not reacting less because they feel less. They are reacting less because they are processing more. They are not disconnected from what is happening around the They are just not being controlled by it. And that difference is exactly what makes them difficult to understand for people who move without thinking, but deeply consistent for those who take the time to observe them properly. There's a hidden power that most people don't notice at first. When empaths don't follow trends, don't copy behavior, and don't reshape themselves just to match what everyone else is doing, they stay consistent with who they are. They don't keep changing their identity depending on what is popular at the moment. They don't bend their personality just to fit into whatever is socially accepted right now. Instead, they stay rooted in something deeper, authenticity. And in a world that is constantly moving toward imitation, repetition, and social copying, that consistency becomes rare. People may not immediately understand empaths. At first glance, they might seem different, quiet, or even detached from what everyone else is doing. But even if they can't explain it, people still feel it. They feel that something is different about them because it's real. There is no forced personality, no performance, no adaptation just for approval. What empaths express is us, usually aligned with what they actually feel inside, not what they think will be accepted outside. And that creates a very subtle but powerful effect. In environments where most people are adjusting themselves constantly, changing opinions, adopting trends, shifting identities to stay relevant, empaths remain steady. They don't lose themselves in the noise of influence. They observe it, understand it, but don't automatically become it. That stability is what makes them stand out even when they are not trying to. Over time, this consistency becomes their strength because while trends fade, opinions change, and social dynamics shift rapidly, authenticity remains stable. And people, even if they don't consciously realize it, are naturally drawn to what feels real. So even when empaths are not seeking attention, approval, or recognition, their presence carries a certain weight, not because they are louder, but because they are more aligned with themselves. And in the long run, that quiet alignment becomes more powerful than any temporary popularity. Because being real in a world of imitation is not just different, it is rare. So if you are an empath who doesn't follow trends, doesn't cop what everyone else is doing, and doesn't feel the need to constantly align with the crowd, there is something important you need to understand. You are not disconnected from the world. You are not difficult to understand, and you are not missing out on anything essential. What has actually happened is something much more internal and meaningful. You have reached a point where external direction is no longer required to define who you are. You are no longer building your identity based on what is popular, what is accepted, or what is being approved by others in a given moment. Instead, your process has changed. You observe what is happening around you. You understand the patterns behind it. You recognize the emotional and social influence behind it, but you don't automatically become part of it. You choose intentionally. And that intentional choice is what separates reaction from awareness. This is not confusion. It is clarity. It is not isolation. It is discernment. It is not resistance to people or society. It is alignment with self. And that level of awareness is rare. Most people are still moving through life in response mode, reacting quickly, adjusting constantly, and shaping themselves based on external feedback. But you are no longer operating that way. You are filtering experiences through internal understanding before responding to them. Because of that, your behavior can often be misunderstood from the outside. Your silence is not emptiness. It is processing. Your distance is not disinterest. It is observation. Your stillness is not absence. It is awareness. But people who don't see that depth may misinterpret it because they are used to visible reactions, constant participation, and immediate engagement. And this is where the final shift happens. Once you fully accept that your way of being is not lacking anything, just different. You stop questioning yourself. You stop asking,